Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. So if you've ever thought about going into business with someone, the material we're looking at today is probably going to completely shift your paradigm. It definitely challenged mine. We're going to unpack the natural laws of these alliances and rethink pretty much everything we thought we knew about fairness, leadership, and loyalty.
You know, why do most partnerships end as enemies? We see it literally all the time, don't we? Best friends start a company, and, well, 5 years later, they aren't even speaking to each other. The data actually argues that our conventional business wisdom, the exact things we're taught about fairness and staying together forever, might just be the very things setting us up for failure.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a roadmap covering 5 key phases today. First, the real reason for partnership. Second, the 50-50 illusion and the 3-to-7 rule. Third, who should actually take the lead. Fourth, partnership's expiration date of 3 years. And finally, successful separation and the 30% share.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the real reason for partnership.
So we kind of have to challenge this romanticized idea that you partner up just because you want to work with a friend. In reality, a partnership is formed fundamentally because an individual lacks complete strength or resources on their own. It requires humbling your ego a bit and acknowledging that you actually need someone else's specific strengths to fill your own gaps. If you just rely entirely on your own intelligence and ignore what your partner brings to the table, the partnership is absolutely bound to fracture. Moving right along to Section 2, the 50-50 illusion and the 3-to-7 rule.
Get ready for a massive paradigm shift here. A 50-50 split almost guarantees a fight. I know, we're conditioned from a super young age to think that fairness means splitting everything right down the middle. But demanding an equal half completely ignores the natural imbalance of human strengths. No two people ever meet with exactly equal energy, talent, and resources. So if you force a 50-50 split, you're constantly going to be measuring, comparing, and complaining. It just inevitably leads to conflict.
Now, what's really interesting here is that instead of artificially forcing a half-and-half dynamic, partnerships naturally fall into a 3-to-7 ratio based on individual attributes. When you weigh the total advantages, like maybe one person has the technical skills, but the other brings the capital and an amazing public presence, it naturally tilts 70-30. Acknowledging this reality right from day one is exactly what prevents all that friction and fighting later on.
Which brings us to Section 3. Who should take the lead?
This is a really crucial phase. You basically have 2 distinct roles, the leader who steps out in front and the supporter who provides the backing and foundation. Creating a 2-headed monster where both people try to steer the ship, well, that usually just means you're going in circles. One person has to be the driver, and the supporter has to let them run without getting in the way just because they want to turn at the wheel. So how do you actually figure out who is who? You have to objectively evaluate some specific criteria from the source material. Talent and skills, resources like the underlying economy, and energy or sheer presence. If your partner has 2 or 3 of these massive advantages, their percentage of leadership goes up. The partner possessing more of these traits, the one with the larger overall capacity, naturally assumes that front-facing 70% leadership role. And this brilliantly illustrates how it plays out in the real world. Look at historical titans like Lee Byung-chul, the legendary founder of Samsung. He initially started with partners, but he naturally took the lead because his presence and energy mass were simply too huge to be contained in a basic equal split. It's the same story with Daewoo founder Kim Woo-chung. He started with a group of co-founders but quickly emerged as the sole leader. For these guys, a 50-50 split was literally impossible. Their immense drive just naturally dictated the leadership structure. All right, on to Section 4, partnership's expiration date of 3 years. Let's see how this builds, because this concept is highly counterintuitive. We so often think of business partnerships like marriages, right? Supposed to last a lifetime. But they're actually fundamentally designed to be temporary alliances. In year 0, you form the alliance because you lack strength. By year 3, you do a major evaluation. If you still lack strength, you can recommit for another cycle. But by year 6, or whenever you reach your maximum independent strength, it is time for independence. You must separate and rule your own kingdoms. Trying to hold on forever out of some misplaced sense of loyalty, that almost always breeds resentment. And finally, Section 5, successful separation and the 30% share. So, the crucial point is, how do you actually exit a partnership without destroying it or burning bridges? When you get strong enough to separate and start your own venture, human greed usually kicks in hard. You want to take 100% of what's yours and just run.
But the brilliant rule here is that you should purposefully leave 30% of your share behind as an ongoing investment in your former partner's continuous success. It basically works in 3 simple steps. First, you acknowledge your newfound independent strength. Second, you separate gracefully to go build your own business. And third, this is the kicker, you leave that 30% behind to grow as mutual stock. By doing this, you're still actively invested in their success. And as they grow, your share grows right along with them. Being greedy and trying to pull away 100% like sticky gum just destroys that residual value and actually hinders both of your futures. Which leads us to a really powerful conclusion. Staying together forever means you will separate as enemies. True success is growing, separating gracefully, and mutually elevating. It highlights this truly beautiful paradox. Letting go, gracefully stepping away when the time is absolutely right, and leaving a piece of your success behind is actually how you achieve permanent mutual success. Neither of you is stifled by an arrangement that has simply outlived its usefulness.
This entire framework completely flips how we view working with others. It is not about forcing 50-50 equality, and it's certainly not about staying together until the bitter end. It's about combining strengths, letting the strongest energy lead, building your own power, and then beautifully separating to conquer your own fields. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Are you ready to grow and eventually let go? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning and keep growing.